sounds from the rhythm underground. Welcome to the We Love Guitar Nerds podcast, your place for all things guitar. We have your interviews, we have your lessons, your boomer discussions, and your verbal rabble-rousings. So please hit subscribe, share, and like to join our constantly growing musical community. Quentin Mother Effin' Jones, how are you? Quentin Jones, roots musician,
I'm good.
Rock and roll, blues.
I'm good.
Roll, punk rock, punk ass.
Hey, whoa! Now you're going just a little too far there, child.
How you doing?
You know, I'm doing all right. I'm getting it. I'm getting where I can go when I can go.
Yeah, that's all we can.
First, I'm watching all my health. You know, taking good care of myself, making sure I drink plenty of Diet Coke. Don't drink water, whatever you do. Worst thing in the world for you is bottled water. Don't drink it.
All right.
I can prove it. Let me ask you a question, Rod.
Okay, I'm listening.
What swims in water?
Fish.
Where do fish poop?
In water.
Thank you. Do you ever see a fish swimming in Diet Coke?
No, you got a point.
Rest my case. Rest my case.
So how you doing these days?
You know, I'm doing all right. I'm working on so many different levels, and working on so many different on different projects. You know, making sure that I'm cutting the grass.
Right.
My mentor taught me that you have to put your head down and push that mower.
Right.
And it's not a mower that's power assist. It's like, you know, the old mower you actually had to push.
Yeah.
And that's what you do every day, you know. And some of the work is glamorous and some of it's not, but it all is work. And working is the key.
Yes.
To me, playing out is the key.
It is a blessing. It's a blessing to that is your work.
Well, also it makes you a better musician. It's like a wheel. The more you know, it's like one of those tubes, you know, and you're running it, you know.
Like
it's like when you're running. Remember when you're running down the hill as a kid and your heels start kicking your ass? You're going so fast. That's kind of what you got to do.
Okay, your roots. Where does music go? Go back to your beginnings.
How far back?
You're 3 years old.
Well, it would have to be well aware of my siblings who are all older than me.
Yep.
Their music. My brother Bruce had a Brown record player, not a stereo, just a record player, you know. And we had Beatle records, and we had Hermits records, and we had Dave Clark 5 records, and we had Rolling Stone records, and we had Freddie and the Dreamer records. And that was a big thing. And then my dad, you know, I'd steal everybody's records, and I'd raid my dad's records, and he had like Johnny Cash. He had the very first Glenn Campbell album. It was an instrumental 12-string. It's called The Astonishing 12-String Guitar of Glenn Campbell. If you haven't heard it yet, it's on Spotify. Go listen to it. The Astonishing 12-String Guitar of Glenn Campbell. It's all acoustic. It's amazing guitar work. And I'd listen to that. Wendell had Venture records, and you know, and he had a lot of, you know, like Beach Boys, and my cousins were big into Beach Boys. My one cousin had a band. Oh my God, he was a god. And I'll tell you a little more about him in a minute. Another cousin was on RCA Records and was touring with Nancy Sinatra. So I was very aware. My dad played guitar and sang. My mom was an opera singer, a trained opera singer. She would sing lead in operas like La Boheme. And her instructor was the leading soprano of the Met in the 30s.
All right.
And, you know, so I was always around music. And, of course, we would watch. There was a thing back in the 60s. It was called a family. I don't know if any of you guys know about this, but it was when you had a mom and a dad, and you had brothers, and what you had is you had a TV that would get maybe 2 or 3 stations, and like on a Sunday night, this thing called a family would sit around and watch a show, something like the Ed Sullivan Show, where there'd be something on there for mom, and there'd be something on there for dad, and there'd be some, all kinds of stuff, and they always had bands, or Johnny Cash had a show. He would always have all different types of people, like you could see Bob Dylan or Creedence or anybody, and then you would talk about it. It was a big deal. You speak for weeks. You go to school at lunch. First of all, you'd have to look at everybody's lunchbox and see who were the weird kids. Yes. Generally, I'd be sitting with them.
I was going to say, that was my next question. Who was on your lunchbox?
The Beatles.
Of course.
What are you? Come on. What's your problem?
You're not that old, though, right? You don't remember the Ed Sullivan.
I do remember Ed Sullivan.
Oh, so you are that old. Okay.
I'm 60.
Oh, God.
I would have been 4 years old.
Okay.
Now, and I remember, here's the funny thing. I don't remember. Okay, so they came over and they did a show in New York at the theater. And then the next week they did one from Miami. That's the one I remember.
Okay.
I don't remember the New York one, although I was aware of it. I remember things like Shea Stadium. It was news, and my brother Bruce would tell me, or my dad would talk about it. It was because when they played Shea Stadium, the Beatles played Shea Stadium. That was the first, they invented stadium touring. They invented it.
Right.
Nobody else did. They did. So, it was all big things. And like I said, it seemed to me that there was less ways to get your information.
Yeah.
But you got more information and you knew what the hell was going on. Rod, I'm not kidding you. Like, I would wait till people would go to school and I'd still be like preschool or whatever, and I'd be at home a lot by myself, and I would go and get into their records, they would have to hide their records and shit from me. And I couldn't read, but I could figure out who I could be listening to because I memorized the label.
Yeah.
Right? And I knew the Capitol label was the Beatles.
Yeah.
And I knew Columbia was Johnny Cash. There was a lot of guys on Columbia from the 60s because Columbia must have made a deal with all those Rockabilly guys.
Yeah.
So that's how I started. And then my dad had a guitar, and my dad would tell you, don't touch that guitar. And I never did.
Really?
When he was home.
I was gonna say.
As soon as that man left the house, I went right over to that guitar.
Yeah.
And I wanted a guitar. And Bruce took some guitar lessons at one point, and there was a book that had some Beatle songs in it. Somebody had dug up.
All right.
And so I would get the guitar, and I would sit there and I would dope out the chord diagram.
Right.
And then I'd go through the book and find the songs that I could had the chords in it that I could play.
Right.
Don't bother learning new stuff. But anyways, I wanted to.
It was new stuff though.
Well, was I wanted a guitar, and my brother Bruce gave me a guitar which he had stolen. He'd stolen it from my aunt's boyfriend.
Okay.
Because in the 60s, everybody was going to be a folk guy.
Okay.
And he went out and bought this guy bought a beautiful Kalamazoo American made Epiphone.
Right.
All mahogany. And that ended up in my possession. And that man never did learn to play the guitar. But I remember I had, the strings were broken and stuff. And my cousin brought my grandmother down to visit, and I showed him my guitar, and I was a peewee, and he was driving. He was older than 16. He wasn't 20 yet, but he had a girlfriend and he had a band and he played the guitar. And a lot of times when you're that far in age difference, it's beyond them picking on you. Like, somebody, if you're 10 and you're 14-year-old cousin, but this guy, I was like 10 and he was like 18 or 19.
Yeah. He was like
he was very, very kind to me, and he used to let me, I bugged the shit out of him about his guitars and stuff. But anyways, he took that guitar home, and this lives with me to this day. He took it home because my grandmother was going to be there for a week, and I guess he was going to come back down and pick her up. And he took the guitar home, and he came back, and that guitar, it was restrung, and it had a strap on it. It was the same strap as Jimi Hendrix had, I'll tell you. And it had a book in there, and it had some picks, and it had a polishing cloth, and everything a guy needed, you know. And I never forgot that.
Mm-hmm.
I used to carry that guitar all over the neighborhood. And my friend had a drum set. And I went over there. Me and him, we wrote a song. His name was Dave Kushabar. And we wrote a song. It goes like this. Smoking pot, hot on pot, till you're caught smoking pot. That was our song. Because I had heard the Pusher. And I saw Easy Rider. I would have been like 1971, 72. So I've been nine or 10.
Yeah. Okay.
You know. And I had some vague idea, you know.
Yeah.
It was like the song was about if you get caught, you know. That's what it was about. Getting caught.
Yeah. What am I doing it? No.
I had no idea what the hell I was talking about. I was 9. Yeah. But you know what? I was giving it a try.
Yeah.
You know, here's the thing.
So you got your Beatle chord book and you started playing songs?
We were creative. Creators create.
Yes.
Don't matter. Create.
I know.
And here's the thing, Rod. And Rod, we've known each other quite a long time.
30 years.
30 years. You know, I'm just telling it straight down. And the good and the bad is both valuable.
Yeah.
In fact, the bad is more valuable than the good.
You remember it? You remember it for a very long time.
Learn from it. That's right. Nothing like sucking.
Right.
You know. And if you can realize that you suck, if you can put your ego aside, you actually can become very good.
Mm-hmm. Then
you bring that ego out when it comes time to play. But this story I want to tell you is a good story.
Mm-hmm.
This is for all the people. Now, I thought that when you were born with all your abilities. I had no idea. I didn't understand. I came in a house. I grew up in a family of gods and heroes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they were all performers. My dad was a horse trainer, you know, and it was like, you know, I would be a little boy, and I'd hear stories about my grandfather and my great-grandfather as horsemen, you know, and it was just like these guys were like, you know, there was no way you were going to do that. But so what you have to do is ignore people. And my mother had a tape recorder, a reel-to-reel tape recorder. And I'll tell you, no tape recorders were safe in my house.
Mm-hmm.
So I took this tape recorder, and I can tell you multiple funny stories about this tape recorder. But the point I want to make is I hung up some curtains in the basement. I was going to make my own studio, just like Paul McCartney had.
Mm-hmm.
Because that was one of the things that flipped me out in 1970 when that record came out. My brother Bruce brought it home and put it on, and I'm like, "What's this?" McCartney. Yeah, it's one of the greatest albums ever. Mm-hmm. McCartney is a phenomenal album, and Ram. Those first 2 albums are phenomenal. And when they came out, they were not well received. I always loved them. You can listen to the McCartney album and hear his emotion.
Mm-hmm.
You can hear the emotion. Anyways, long story short, I was going to do. I had a drum set in the basement, and I had a guitar and a Shure Vocal Master PA head, which I had hooked up to this reel-to-reel tape recorder. And I used to go over to Radio Shack, and I might have been 15 or 16 at this time, and I would buy reels of tape. And not knowing anything, you could put a reel on at the slowest speed and get like 5 hours, 4 hours. It was some ungodly amount of time. Mm-hmm. It would just move like very slow. The worst thing to do. It sounded terrible, but I didn't know.
Yeah.
And I would write songs, and I'd fill up the tapes. And I am not kidding. When I was all done with this period of my life, I had a big box that jugs of water come in. You know, like when you get like 6 bottles of giant water, mm-hmm. A big box filled with these tapes of songs that I wrote. And there wasn't a good one in the bunch. Not one. But I learned. And I didn't give up. Have you been paying attention to this Jalen Hurts guy?
Jalen Hurts?
Jalen Hurts.
Jalen Hurts. No.
Okay, so I sometimes like to watch things and follow things that I know I have no ability to do.
All right. Like
And
Emmanuel.
I just not going to be able to do it.
Right.
But that way I can put my mind at rest, right?
Right.
And I fell upon football in my 30s. I never really followed it, but all of a sudden I realized this is something I could never do, and I started learning about it. Well, there's this kid, and he's in his 20s. He was a quarterback,
Right.
and he got drafted by the Philadelphia Eagles, and they had this kid quarterback. They had this quarterback guy who they had just gotten, and he was like MVP, this guy, and everybody was like, this guy's amazing, he's going to be great. This guy, he looked the part, he acted the part, he throwing the balls and everything, but he couldn't really win. But they had a lot of money. They gave him like $100 million contract, but something was up because the next year they drafted this Jalen Hurts guy. Okay. And everybody said, why would they do that? And they picked him too high. He'll never make the NFL, you know? I mean, he's good, but there are certain things you can't learn, and he just doesn't have it. And the first year they had him, they sat the other guy down at the end of the season. They put this kid in. And he did okay, but everybody was like, yeah, you know, he's all right. But Philadelphia is going to pick a new quarterback coming out of college. They're going to do it next year. Mm-hmm. Well, the next year came around, and they got rid of the super guy, and they kept this kid, and they didn't pick a quarterback. And everybody's like, I don't know what's wrong. This kid's just, you know, Philly's just they're going to stink. They can't do it. And he did pretty good. And point is, this year, the kid's in the Super Bowl. He's up for most valuable player. And the industry's going, I do not believe how much better this guy got. Because you know what this guy did? He worked. Yeah. And he practiced, and he got people to help him, and he got a hold of the people that worked with this guy, and he got a hold of this guy. He had no ego.
Yes.
Do you know any guitar players that'll call up other guitar players and ask them for help? Yeah, me. You know, I will do that, right?
I do know that.
Right?
And I do too.
And some people don't do that because they have deemed themselves perfect at 22 or something, you know? I'm still learning. You know, I learn every day. So my point is, this is a guy, and I don't get impressed by a lot. The last athlete, other than someone in my family, as they were horsemen, the last athlete that I was impressed by was Muhammad Ali.
Right.
And this boy, this guy is amazing. His attitude is what you want to have.
Yeah.
If you want to be a great musician, you learn about this guy.
Right. Michael Jordan is the same way. You got to be coachable.
There you go.
He wasn't as a teenager. He wasn't the greatest basketball player on the team. He was coachable.
Right. This guy got sat down when he was a college player. He lost his starting position in college. Yeah. So he had strikes against him. But what they didn't understand, and what a lot of guys, there were some people that were saying, no, you don't understand this kid. But his father is a high school football coach. So, I mean, he was taught the right way. His father brought him up the right way. So anyways, let's get back to music. What else you want to know?
Jalen Hurts. I thought that was somebody from back in the 70s. So he's the guy who's the Eagles quarterback now.
Yeah, and they're in Arizona. They're going to play for the Super Bowl.
That's why you're asking me. This is somebody I should know. I thought, what, he got a new record deal or a...
Yeah, and he's looking for a guy.
Yeah. All right. So the Beatles. You went through the Beatles, and then Bruce showed you Jimi Hendrix.
No. Wendell showed me Jimi Hendrix.
Oh, that is unbelievable. I didn't take Wendell for a Jimi Hendrix kind of guy.
Okay, well, Wendell was into a lot of the. I mean, he got the first Jimi Hendrix album. I mean, we used to put an Indigada Vida. Mm-hmm. Iron Butterfly on Mom's Zenith, man.
Right.
Nothing. That thing sounded great, you know, because it was a tubes. You know, you turn on the stereo, wait for it to warm up. But no, Bruce would make sure. I mean, Bruce turned me on to a Bob Marley. I remember in '78, or I think it was '78, we were in Delaware, and we went to this record store, and Bruce was like, "Buy this guy. This guy's really good." And I didn't. Bob Marley was yet to be as big as he was soon to get. Mm-hmm. And it was a live Bob Marley. It was great. But the Hendrix story is, what was really great about that was I must have been in like 7th grade. And I stayed at home with my brothers or went to horse shows with them a lot. I mean, I was left, what I'm trying to say is, in the company of my brothers as authority figures.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Oh boy.
And so like it would be just Wendell and I at home, or like one winter my mom and dad took Wendell and Lisa and a bunch of horses and went down south for winter training.
Right.
I was in 10th grade and I stayed up here up north with Bruce,
Right.
and we took care of the horses here. I'm like 16.
Right.
Like, make sure you go to school. Okay, I will. But anyways, I was at home. It was in the summer.
Yeah.
And it was like 3:30 in the morning. I was upstairs and in bed sleeping, and Wendell comes running in the room. He's like, "Hey, get up, man! Come on downstairs." I'm like, "What? Get downstairs! You got to see it. Jimi Hendrix is coming on. This guy, you got to see this guy." And I went downstairs. It was the Monterey Pop Festival,
Okay.
and I'm sitting there, and the commercial's over, and it's Jimi Hendrix woo, doing all that stuff with the feedback. And I was like, mesmerized.
Car on fire.
Oh, it was crazy. And I remember going to school the next day. And this is because I was in junior high at this time. Oh, and even seeing my buddies and stuff, my band guys that like, and just trying to explain to them what it was I saw, because you couldn't get on YouTube.
Right. People just don't know.
Well, it's better. YouTube sucks. The internet sucks. Wait do you see what they do to us with this artificial intelligence? Poor people, the poor kids coming up today. I'm just so sorry. It's going to be the most heartless, soulless thing you've ever heard coming.
And cursive. What are they getting rid of cursive for?
Anyways, I practiced all that. I had to stay after school and all that shit. Now you don't even use it. A good slap in the side of the head that's got to come back in style.
Yep.
That'll straighten you right up. I'll never forget one time I was working at the stable, and we were on the wash rack where you wash the horses. There were no horses on there, but there was the drain was backed up, and I was standing in a puddle. And I went to unplug the electric fan. And before my hand could reach the plug, my dad's hand reached the back of my head.
Oh, okay.
And he said, "What the hell's wrong with you? Don't do that." And you know what?
I didn't do it.
He explained to me I could fry myself. So you know what I did? I never did it again. Nobody ever had to tell me again. No one was like, "Tyler, stop it." None of that shit.
Yeah.
It was one and done.
Yeah.
One and done. I was right as rain from there on. You know what? I never needed the tags on the blow dryers that say don't do, because my dad taught me that. It was 2 seconds.
You never went through that Tide Pod.
Never had to. You get one of them, straighten you right up.
Yes. All right. British Invasion.
Yeah.
British Invasion. Beatles or Stones?
Well, the Stones are not the Stones are followers.
Okay.
They're great. I don't have even a speck of their ability or their creativity.
Right.
So for me to speak in any way negatively, I'm only speaking in,
if you had to choose,
I historically see it.
Right.
And it's all you got to do is buy the albums, buy what the Beatles did in '64 and the Stones did it in '65.
Right.
Okay, and that's okay, because the rest of the world did. Because the Beatles, as songwriters and everything, were so different than everyone else.
And there's a good reason for this. And why was this?
Because of how they came up, because they sucked and they couldn't get a gig, and they had to take the shittiest gigs in the shittiest places. And they ended up playing in the shittiest city, in the shittiest country in Europe. And they were not only in the shittiest city, they were in the shittiest section of the city, in the shittiest club, right? Got it?
Right.
And they had to play like 8 hours a night.
Right.
And they would run out of rock and roll after a while, because it was 1960.
Right.
And, so then they would start doing some pop, or they would start doing some country, or they would start doing some, standards. Thank you. And they would learn these chord progressions and these melodic lines, and they would end up, using some very sophisticated scales, things like melodic minors and things like that they had no idea what they were doing.
Probably don't know to this day.
Exactly.
Right.
If you listen to yesterday, it follows the perfect example where it's the melodic minor on the way up, and when he comes back down, he's doing a regular major, the natural major, which is that's a very, very strict
Very classical.
classical thing that Chuck Berry didn't have in his music, as great as he was, right?
They were part Chuck Berry, but they were also part.
They could do Chuck Berry better than anybody, so good. And Chuck Berry loved them, and so did Little Richard and all those guys, because all those guys played with the Beatles. Because as the Beatles got bigger, Chuck Berry or Little Richard and Gene Vincent, all these guys would come through England and they would work with the Beatles. Mm-hmm. And in fact, Little Richard wanted to sign the Beatles and tried to get VJ to put them out before VJ actually did. Mm-hmm. But now the Stones, I mean, they were masters, and personally, I mean, and I'm I have nothing but respect for them, but after Some Girls, they just kind of kept rehashing it. I have a theory that Brian Jones' creativity bled all the way into the early 70s.
Okay.
He was not in the band. That momentum took them. And then they had, for a while, they were hanging with Graham Parsons, who taught Keith the 5-string guitar and those tunings and things.
Right.
Which is what
Open G?
Yes, which is what propelled the Stones for quite some time.
That kind of like when you talk about the Rolling Stones, you're talking about a couple different eras. There's the early Stones that were kind of like Beatles light.
Yeah, but they were almost
they were like a British invasion, kind of like what people.
Yeah, but they opened for Hermits.
Yeah.
I know this firsthand. I know the stories firsthand because I played with Peter Noon, Yeah. But and they were phenomenal. I mean, Beggar's Banquet is great. Do you ever hear their version of I Don't Know Why? The Stevie Wonder song, I Don't Know Why I Love You. It's amazing. And Brian Jones was great, but they did not blaze the trail.
Yes.
And they were every bit, like the Beatles had to be told to stop wearing leathers and stop being swearing and stop fighting and stop
to be the good old boys or the goody boys,
drinking and drugging and prostituting.
Right.
Because they were from a very poor area or lower middle class area. They were working class.
Yes.
As where the Stones were nice college boys. Yeah, London boys. Mm-hmm. Except for Brian Jones.
Yeah.
He was a real badass. But there was a lot of other British invasion stuff that was phenomenal. And if you listen to it with the right ears and get past the pop of it, you can hear the rawness of it. Because all those bands were playing raw. Bands like, Freddie and the Dreamers. I mean, they if you're going to make a fool of somebody, if you listen to that, that's them copying the Beatles doing that song. So,
okay.
Yeah, that's my thoughts on that.
All right. Your first band.
We were horrible.
You're horrible? That's the natural progression of things, though, right?
Yeah, well, you got to get through it.
Pull the string of horribleness.
Yes, you have to get through it.
Go through it.
You have to. And what you had. I started.
I don't want to hear you. Don't buy your way in.
I started my first band in 7th grade by convincing 2 of my friends to ask for a drum set and a bass rig, and I knew these particular kids would get it because their parents got them whatever they want. They had everything like the Evel Knievel stunt cycle and SSTs and all these toys of the day. And, I had a piece of wood, had a pitchfork and a wheelbarrow, Right. I had a whole nother life, which was great. But anyways, long story short, we played in garages and basements and stuff. I did manage to put together a talent show appearance in 8th grade, but around 16, when I turned 16, I took out the phone book in Lancaster, and I literally started I opened it up to taverns, and I started at A, and I called every place. Do you have bands? Do you have bands? Yeah, and I managed. Couple of times I got bigger rooms. Like I got the old Colony, which at the time was the size of it was a big room, and I'm talking to the guy, and the guy must have smelled that I I was, he's like, you do realize that the bands that come here, are pretty big bands, and they bring like truckloads of equipment in. I'm like, oh yeah, I borrowed Dad's pickup, and we put the PA in the pickup. Yeah, I had no clue.
Mm-hmm.
So anyways, I convinced some tavern, some bar, corner Archie Bunker type bar. For those of you that don't know, Archie Bunker was a TV character.
Yes.
But they had a little corner bar in his neighborhood. So this was like a corner bar. No business coming in there. And I don't know how I convinced this guy to let my band come in there. Not only did I convince him to let us play, I convinced him to give us $50, So me and the drummer, who wasn't very good, and I definitely was not good. I couldn't play lead guitar. I could barely play a few good chords, but I made up for it by not being able to sing. So,
You didn't let that stop you though.
yeah, and we didn't. Our choice of material was hideous for what we were trying to do.
Yeah.
Anyways, we started to play, and it was the very second song. Guy comes up, and like, stop! You're disturbing my patrons. That's actually what he said. So we tore down, and I went over to the bar, and I stood there, and the guy comes up to me and says, can I help you? I said, yeah, do you have my $50? He looked at me, went to the cashier, and gave me $50. I said, all right, when do you want us back? And he goes, I'll call you. And I'm still waiting on that call.
He didn't call you back?
He hasn't called me back, and it's been 40 years.
Yeah. And yeah.
My God,
important. Going back to what you said, even the bad stuff completely teaches you better almost.
Yeah, well, you have to learn that. You got to do that. I mean, I had managed to book like 2 other bars, and we were hideous, but that taught you, I always put myself in hot water. I always want to be the weakest link.
Mm-hmm.
I always want to be the least accomplished in the room. If I'm the most accomplished guy in the room, I'm in the wrong room.
Right.
Yeah. I need to be in the room with the other people.
Yeah. That you're not going to.
Now, here's the problem with that. You can open them doors, but once you come in the room, you got about 30 seconds to toe the line.
Right.
It doesn't mean you have to be great per se.
Yeah.
But you can't be saying stupid shit, doing stupid shit, and looking unprepared.
Right.
Because they'll bounce you right out of the room. So you may be able to, just like I was able to bullshit my way into a couple of corner bars, I got bounced right away, right? Mm-hmm. So you want to keep getting bounced and keep getting up until you stop getting thrown down. Mm-hmm. Then when you're not being thrown out of the room, but you still feel icky because you know that everybody else is smoking you, then you go, well, I need to play more. I need to practice more. I need to up my game. Or you go home.
Yes. And quit and sell your guitars. But that's a pansy route, but whatever.
Yeah, well, got this call. Charlie Gracie is a very, very great artist, mm-hmm. Well respected. There's a book out on him called Rock and Roll's Hidden Giant, mm-hmm. The Charlie Gracie story. Paul McCartney writes the foreword.
Yes.
And I'm in the goddamn book.
Mm-hmm.
And when I go to the grocery store and I tell the people that they don't take...
Go back to that restaurant and show them.
No, they don't give a shit. They don't take any money off my bill at the grocery store because of this. But anyways, I did a tour with him opening for a big artist all over the West Coast. Mm-hmm. It was a half an hour show, and all we played was Charlie Gracie numbers. That's it. Charlie had some hits in the 50s, quite a few hits, and he was on the Butterfly. He was on the Ed Sullivan Show, and a lot of guys covered him. Actually, the Beatles covered Butterfly at one point, which they would have, going back to what I was saying, because, anyways, long story short, we did this big tour. It was great. And then the next year I get a phone call from him, and I was just getting divorced from my first wife, and I was really looking for the work. And he called me up and he said, hey, I have a whole summer's worth of gigs with my band, because he had his own band. And he took me and another fellow, the drummer, Dave Ferreira, on the road with him to open for this big artist because he wanted a more rock and roll band. Mm-hmm. But he did this other thing, which was like a loungy type thing, And he said, my bass player's not able to do it this year. Do you want to do it?
Yeah.
And I was like, yes.
On bass.
On bass.
Yeah.
I was like, yes. He says, can you play the bass? I said, yeah, like nobody's business. Woo! I didn't even have a bass. I said to him, can you send me a set list? He goes, no, I don't use set list. You'll see on the other show, we had a set list. Yeah. I said, oh, okay, fine. When can we rehearse?
I don't rehearse.
I was like, okay, not a problem. Can you send me a list of songs? He goes, no. He goes, I know over 3,000 songs, kid. He goes, I'll tell you what, you show up with your bass, and if you're still there at the end of the summer, you'll be able to play with anybody.
Yeah, he was right.
And I showed up with my bass thinking I was going to be able to walk through this because we're going to, it's just rock and roll stuff, right? And he would do things like, all right, it's polka time. And he'd break into the beer barrel polka. Right. You better know your twos real quick and your sixes and how a six works other than in rock and roll and how a six works in a standard. He'd go, hey, Sinatra, B flat. That's what you got.
All right.
Sorry.
You're lucky he said B flat.
B flat. And you'd look at his hands thinking maybe you could see his, and he was playing all these like second inversions and stuff.
Demolished chords.
Demolish augmentative plus minus chords with that little zero.
Yeah. Slashy zero.
I swear to God, Rod, I almost quit. I really did. I remember I thought it'd be funny. I had a little handheld tape recorder. This was, again, back before all the bullshit.
Meaning phones.
Yeah, and the internet and all that shit.
Yeah, right.
So I got a cassette tape recorder. I was going to tape the performance and then study it, and I did. And I went back the next weekend. It was Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and I needed this money.
Mm-hmm.
And I went back thinking I had his number. About 80% of it was all new that week.
Mm-hmm.
He threw about 80, he kept about 20% each week.
Mm-hmm.
So you were in trouble every week. So what you had to do is quickly learn how to follow the vocal.
So how'd you do it?
Learn how to follow the vocal.
Okay, and what were the survival skills?
Knowing where the six was.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing when he was going to a two. You got to know. I had to know. A seven didn't matter. We weren't going to use it. Yeah. Once in a while, we'd throw a seven in, and I would just sweat through it.
Yeah.
If you're in the key, you can just hold the root sometimes. You'll be fine.
Mm-hmm.
You can get through it. But you had to learn vocally the cues that were coming.
Yeah.
Just like when you see the sign for the exits. And sometimes it's one exit, and sometimes it's one of those things where it goes every which way, and you better pay attention.
Mm-hmm.
I tell my students not to look at my hands. They're misleading.
Mm-hmm.
Your eyes will mislead you. Learn to use your ears. And after a while, you're still going to have a couple of turn left when you're supposed to turn right, but most of the time you got it. And if you do turn the wrong direction, you can quickly get back on track.
Yeah. So the ears, the survival skills, your ears.
Yeah, you got to know them. You got to understand how the melody works.
Right.
And also, you know what else you got to do? Over here, you can't see, but on that wall, I've got 2,000 albums, vinyl albums.
Mm-hmm.
That means I've listened to every one. Not while I'm driving, not while I'm working out, not while I'm cleaning the house. Mm-hmm. Well, I got to sit my ass down and listen to those records. And out of those 2,000 records, a lot of them are not rock and roll.
Yes.
There's all kinds of music in there.
Yeah.
And you got to be familiar with the different types of songs.
You're not just about rockabilly.
First of all, the Reach Around Rodeo Clowns were not rockabilly.
I know.
And secondly, I'm happy that people say I'm rockabilly. I'm happy with all that. But actually, my rockabilly section, rockabilly, the new guys, I know them all. And the old guys didn't last that long because they quickly got out of it.
Yeah.
But rockabilly, I love rockabilly, and I love rockabilly as a musician because you have to have a little bit of swing, a little bit of country, a little bit of blues, a little bit of rock, and even some jazz in there, right? Even hillbilly, you got to have some good hillbilly roots. And so
It's a mixture.
If you're going to learn something like one style of music, so you don't always like. Let me ask you a question. What's your favorite restaurant? Think of one, goddammit.
All right, let's see. Oh, I don't know.
Well, let's just say you go into Bill's House of Clams. Bill's House of Clams, right? The guy in there cooking the seafood, right?
Right.
He may be a great chef.
Right.
And he might even hate seafood.
Right.
But his job is to make the seafood.
And make it well.
And make it well. So you may not be a standard guy, but if you want to go to war with a guitar in your hand, and let me tell you, I have lots of friends have had hit records. That's great. There's only a handful that maintain that level of success. This is the thing I learned from Charlie Gracie. One day he was on the Ed Sullivan Show. Next day he was at Pete's Hoagie Shack. And you got to just go. So my point is, some of the work's not always glamorous, but it's work. As a musician, it's not your right to enjoy everything.
Mm-hmm.
And something else. If you're in it for the business, you got to spend some money.
Yeah.
A guy that gets the hot dog cart puts more thought and planning into his career than most musicians, because most musicians just think, well, if I'm good, everything else all happened. Well, no. You better learn all kinds of skills if you want to survive.
Yeah.
And not just be talking about that 5-year period where you were in a band.
Right.
Now, if you want to just do it for fun, by all means, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing. I wish that, sometimes was the road I took. I don't look down my nose at people that don't do it for a living, and that's fine.
Yeah.
Then
different journey.
Then that's a whole other set of rules.
Yeah.
Me, I'm a road guy. I'm a live guy. I make most people detest me after a while. I wear them down to nubs. I'm like a grinder. Want another gig? That's what I do. I just play and play and play. Yeah. And in order to do that, I have to be able to play standards as well.
Right.
I have to be able to play at a retirement community and give them just as much fun. Because I can tell you what, nobody wants to be put the fuck to sleep. Excuse my language. Nobody wants to hear your version of When the Saints Go Marching In anymore. Those people are dead. The rock and roll generations in these 55 plus communities, and they are in 55 plus communities because they don't want you and being around other people. So they have their own like luxury resorts. You better know how to keep those people happy because they're paying you money to entertain them.
Yes.
Then you go down to the corner bar and you got to keep those people happy. Then the next thing you know, I'm playing with with David Osickinen in the pocket, and now that's a sold out show at a music venue that's 2 stories high, and there's people who wind out then you better give them people the same show. Not any of them. Do you give less than everything?
Right.
And that's the road you learn with guys like Charlie Gracie, because they'll scream at you.
Right.
If you don't do it. That's the other thing. You end up getting embarrassed.
So you were talking about Dave. He has his own band.
In the Pocket.
In the Pocket. And that is, what kind of band is that?
It's all Philadelphia guys.
Okay.
And it's songs of Philadelphia. And somehow they've included me.
Okay. Well, that's wonderful.
It is wonderful. I've met some wonderful people. Huh?
Are you talking
you got Charlie from Soul Survivors. And then you'll have like Tommy Conwell, and you'll have guys from the A's. And they'll do all kinds of, they did Disco Inferno.
Right. Tramps.
Yeah, they do. The Woman's Got the Power with Patti Smythe. She sang it.
Okay.
So, they do the region songs and try to use region artists.
Okay.
I want to put Butterfly into the set.
Yeah.
For when I play. Because, Yeah.
So that is you're learning everything. The other thing that I think you're talking about also is when you play.
I only get to play 2 songs. I'm sorry.
When you play with people, it is not always your music that they're catering to you. Sometimes you're playing, like what you're suggesting is sometimes you do have your music and then you have a backup.
Other times you don't. You gotta be able to do it both.
Yes.
And
That's a skill that is being lost.
well, and here's the other thing though. It's also like, okay, so I have a friend named Annabella Lewin.
Mm-hmm.
Annabella is the lead singer for Bow Wow Wow. Was
Mm-hmm.
the lead singer for Bow Wow Wow. So if Annabella needs a guitar player, then I will go in there and try to play that music note for note.
Yes.
But if Annabella sings with my band, which she does,
Mm-hmm.
then I play the songs as Quentin Jones.
Okay.
Then she
Except
which is it's kind of like, do you remember those cartoons or where the kids are where you're going through the old coal mines on the like the roller coaster type coal cars? That's what it's like when Quentin plays this.
okay.
I love, yeah. There's this thing. It's a video of Buck Owens,
Mm-hmm.
and he's like, "Yeah, turn the guitar down." No, it's not meant to be turned down. This whole thing's meant to come apart at any moment. If it doesn't sound like it's going to smash against the wall, you're not doing it right.
That was Buck Owens.
That was Buck Owens, man. Buck Owens was tough. Let me tell you, he was great.
Yeah, yeah. So my generation knows Buck Owens because of Hee Haw, but they were the Buck Owens and the Buckaroos. Like they were.
They were badasses.
Yes, Don Rich.
Did you ever hear them? Did you ever hear their At Carnegie Hall album?
I have not. I have not. So this is homework.
Carnegie Hall.
All right.
Yeah.
So creating your own opportunities. This is one of the things that I respect you for, because you've always made things happen, and it was like you were saying, a creator creates, and you do that with you do that with business as well. When I say your music business, because you've done what you've done, because you went for it. So creating opportunities.
Well, it goes back to what I was saying. I'm not talking negatively about something here, but for your viewers, I started Rod. I was working with Rod in the beginning of the 90s at a music store, and I had decided that I wanted, I actually had never fancied myself as a lead guitar player per se. I was more about the song,
Mm-hmm.
and I thought, I learned to play the guitar to play the song. And I had a more of my approach with guitar. Like, I got to tell you, when I was a kid, and this is wrong thinking, this is the wrong way, but a friend of mine said, you got to come down here, this new record I got, and it was the first Van Halen album. And I heard that, and I was like, okay, well, there's no sense in trying to be the best guitar player in the world, because right there,
Mm-hmm.
you ain't going to, I don't see where we're going to take it from there. I just don't see it.
Right.
And in reality, I was right, because the only place to take it would be to take it back, not forward.
Yeah.
And not to try to play like him, because the very thing that I hate about Eddie Van Halen is that everybody that came after him tried to play like Eddie Van Halen.
Right.
They did their shitty version of his great.
Necessarily him. It was yeah.
It was the same thing. Like after Sgt. Pepper came out, every band had to do their Sgt. Pepper, and their Sgt. Pepper sucked. Yeah. Anyways, I had decided to become a better guitar player, and that's how I chose rockabilly music. I was like, well, I always loved rockabilly. Don't get me wrong. I was a big Eddie Cochran fan. I was a huge, Cliff Gallup, Gene Vincent fan. The Burnett's, loved the Burnett's, Jerry Lee Lewis. All these people who I ended up having connections with.
Robert Gordon.
Robert Gordon, thank you. I was a huge Robert Gordon fan, right? Stray Cats, right? And these people were people that were gods to me that I could never touch. Understood?
Yeah.
So what happened is I started a band with my brother, Wendell, and we were called the Rockabilly Brothers. And what happened is in no time at all, we went from this little act that played like a corner bars, about half cheesy with these big Elvis looking guys, right? to
There.
you were there. You know, to we started getting heavier and heavier and heavier. And the next thing you know, we weren't rockabilly anymore. But I mean, we had
been now.
huh?
You were who you should have been.
Yeah, no, we were
What you were supposed to be.
we basically took the Clash and made it rockabilly.
Right.
We were really, we were that kind of hard edge stuff. And the music, if you listen to those early Rodeo Clown stuff, it goes every different direction. It's like 1 minute we're playing double time, then we're playing cut time, and then we're doing a reggae beat. It was very, But anyways, we were playing at the G-Man in York. Are they still there?
No.
They still have the G-Man. Remember the G-Man? Gingerbread Man?
I loved it.
Are they still there?
I didn't. No, not for years.
So we're playing over there, and I had met at the store Pat Dahlheimer. Mm-hmm. And Pat and I became pretty good friends. And Pat and the guitar player, Chad would come in every once in a while and buy some, because Stephen Nicholas would get some cool vintage shit in. Mm-hmm. And they were really cool guys. They were really great guys. I just
high school students then.
No. When I was dealing, they had done Throwing Copper. It came out.
Okay, when they first came in, they
came in as kids, but I wasn't there.
Yeah. Okay.
And my culture that I brought to the store, right? I brought a different culture to the store. And those guys were great. And so I was talking to them. I said, you should come see my band tonight. We're at the G-Man, So at the end of the night, like, the owner's mad at us, we're too loud, and people all have sour looking faces, and Wendell's going to punch somebody. And, a lot of fights would break out at our gigs and stuff. Mm-hmm. And Pat comes up to Wendell and I and goes, yeah, you guys are really good. What the hell are you doing here? And we're like, what do you mean? Where are we supposed to be? He's like, you guys don't belong in here. He said, what? Huh?
You need to leave.
Yeah, that's what he said.
You need to level up.
He said, call my friend Seth at the 930 Club in D.C. You tell him I said to get you a gig. And I did. And I got the gig. Jewel was on the show that night, and Jim Lauderdale. It was a big show. Mm-hmm. And one of the bands didn't show up. So we ended up playing their spot as well as our spot. And from that gig, we started booking out-of-town gigs, all from that gig. My career changed at that moment, my trajectory. Instead of trying to get known around Lancaster, York, and Harrisburg, which we were never going to be known around there because we weren't that kind of a band that was big in this area.
The cool kids.
Not saying I don't have my places I play and everything, but we're not like there's a band like the Screaming Daisies, and they're a great band and people love them, and it's a totally different vibe than what we do, and that's what really sells around here. Mm-hmm. And they're really, really good at it, and I'm not good at that stuff,
Nor am I.
So anyways, we started playing through to Delaware, and then through Jersey, and then we started playing in New York City, and then we almost became like one of the house bands at this very famous honky tonk in New York called the Rodeo Bar, which of course was no longer there. Mm-hmm. But and we started seeing that by going to where the music places are. That doesn't mean you have to move. They have these things called highways.
Yeah, synergy. That was cool about being in this area.
You can get to a lot of places.
I'm not the first person to say this, but you're 2 hours from Philly, 3 hours.
Yes.
From York.
Yes.
2 hours.
Pittsburgh.
Baltimore. Yeah, it's a hub.
Yes, it's a great hub. Right. And I followed that trajectory, and you know what happened? I met people. And the more people I met,
Yeah.
The more I kept putting myself in position to fail, the more I succeeded.
Yes.
And I failed. I fell on my face lots. Let me tell you, I've lost houses and wives and all kinds of shit.
Yeah.
But, my job is nothing compared to the poor guys that got to work at the paper cup factory making paper cups third shift. Those poor people, they're working hard.
Yes.
So the least I can do is not be afraid.
Yes.
Not be afraid to take the chance. And guess what? I ended up making 2 albums with Robert Gordon.
Yes.
I ended up writing a song that one of the guys in the Stray Cats did, and it got on television.
Yes.
And I didn't have to eat cat food that year.
Yes.
I ended up working with Jerry Lee Lewis's little sister and making an album and going on tour with her.
Right.
I ended up playing at the biggest rockabilly festival in the country in Las Vegas. I ended up playing with, on one day, I had my own stage.
Okay.
At the festival. And we played with Robert Gordon. I played with Robert Gordon. I played with the Polecats, who had a big hit called Make a Circuit with Me. Look it up, the Polecats. And I played with the Rock Cats, who had a big album and a big hit called Make That Move. And I played with Reach Around Road Clowns. Four sets that night.
Yes.
Ain't bad for a guy who said, Ron, do you think maybe you could help me with this here rockabilly stuff?
Right.
Not bad. Wendell and I started out at the what's the where that place there, New Cumberland there, whatever.
Irish bar.
Radisson. Every Tuesday night we played the Radisson.
Oh yeah, okay.
It was like taking knitting needles and jamming them in your eyes. It was horrible.
I played a New Year's gig there once.
It was horrible.
Yeah, it was.
We went from that to playing the biggest.
Oh, okay, so question for you. Were you a rodeo clown when Pat Dahlheimer saw you? Or were you a rockabilly brother?
We were on the cusp of rodeo clowndom.
Okay.
We weren't there yet.
That matters though.
We
that matters because I think what the rodeo clowns were once you're aware of what the possibilities are, you can cut the rope.
The rope was already cut. We just didn't change the name at that point.
Okay.
We were already like going in and playing heavier shit. And I can tell you who influenced a lot of that. And it's a shame because, he's very talented, but it was Jim Rhodes. He was a drummer for us for a while. And, but he had other ideas all the time, and everything else was, better.
Yeah.
So
go your way.
So go for it.
Yeah, go your way. Go where.
On the other hand, we met Dave Ferreira, who was the actual. I mean, Jim Rhodes was a catalyst for our direction, but Ferreira was actually It was Dave Ferreira, Quentin Jones, Jan Luschek on the upright, and Jan invented his whole way of playing, and we were very, very inventive. I mean, look, Stephen King tweeted about us.
Right.
What more do I got to say?
Wonderful. It was wonderful.
The problem is it was probably one of these bands like King Crimson was a fan of ours to the point that they paid for our 4th album and distributed it.
Okay.
The album Dark Days, Dark Nights was paid by Internet, that company is owned by King Crimson.
Okay.
There was one band on the Internet, King Crimson.
Okay.
And then the Reach Around Rodeo Clowns.
Okay.
Now we were on Lanark and distributed, manufactured by Internet.
Yeah.
Their person that ran their company thought that much of us.
Yeah.
Now you wouldn't think that because you would think Rodeo Clowns and King Crimson are like here. Critically, and
the world probably isn't that way in reality.
Well, we could play. Rodeo Clowns could play any city in the world, and 40 people would show up.
Yeah.
Just not enough people to do it, right? But other bands, other artists, especially in different genres, most of the rockabilly people did not take to us and didn't appreciate us, which is okay, because rockabilly people are very traditionalist, and I got that.
Yeah.
I'm in the Rockabilly Hall of Fame. I am endorsed by Gretsch Guitars. I've written songs for both the Rock Cats and the Stray Cat guys. I have played with Billy Burnett. I played with Linda Gale Lewis, right? Yeah. But I am not rockabilly enough for these people.
That's all right.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of things about, you got to have an upright bass. Yeah. You know what happened when the P bass came out? You could go to dumpsters all over town and get upright basses.
Yeah.
Rockabilly guys threw out. But it was Smutty from the Rock Cats that actually brought that whole thing to the attention of Lee Rocker and stuff. Like those guys saw the Rock Cats. The Stray Cats saw the Rock Cats. Right. They're like, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's pictures of me and Brian. Now Brian doesn't know me as well as Lee does, and Slim Jim.
Yeah.
Slim Jim had to reach around rodeo clowns, play 3-4 times at his club in L.A.
Yeah.
But the guy at Highland Pizza here in Lancaster, he won't take my call.
Yeah.
Because on Saturday nights from 7 to 9, they clear a couple of tables away and they have entertainment. But he won't call me.
Karaoke.
He won't call me.
It's karaoke.
A Slim Jim Phantom will put me in his nightclub on Sunset Strip.
Yeah. Yeah. So
and then,
you got it. You started like from day one, well, not day one, maybe day 5. You've been interested in production and songwriting. Songwriting's always been an important part of your thing. Production.
For a long time, it was the main part.
Yeah.
And my focus has gotten back to, because of the state of the industry.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of things you can fake, but real live music still is real live music. And there are people that still want to hear real live music. Not, look, I didn't see the Grammys because, I don't,
mm-hmm.
I'm just not, it just doesn't ring with me. And that's okay. I'm not knocking it. But like, even people, I would hear them like, Justin Timberlake, I'd hear musicians run him down, or, talk about Madonna or something. Well, look, Madonna's a phenomenal artist and a great songwriter, but you're not going to a Madonna concert. There's never been a Madonna concert, never was a Madonna concert, never will be a Madonna concert. And even Madonna will tell you that her concerts are not concerts, they're shows.
Yes.
And a lot of it's lip synced and a lot of it is mine.
I always play with tracks.
Thank you. Yeah. It's not about this. When you go to see Madonna, it's not about the technique of the bass player.
Right.
Okay. So that's fair. I get it. And I appreciate it. And she worked her ass off. All the boy bands and stuff, people like those guys worked. They're hardworking people.
Yeah.
They're just working differently and they're taking a different way. They're pure entertainment.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
What you should do is learn from them.
Yeah.
I can tell you, Justin Timberlake isn't getting a cheese steak this weekend. And he's not over drinking and overeating and over smoking and he's taking care of himself.
Yep. Probably
and his voice. Huh?
Probably as a millionaire trainer.
Probably.
Yeah. As he should.
Thank you. I know a lot of guys that have money and success that don't do those things.
Yes. And
they don't keep successful for long.
Yeah.
Jalen Hurts got the best guys in the business to train him. Again, nothing wrong with that.
Mm-hmm.
But I got into production because of Paul McCartney.
Yeah.
Because of that McCartney album. I was just fascinated by that.
Your life.
It was a life-changing thing, yes. Mm-hmm. Also, it's almost like the time I put on a Freddie King record in 1974. Do you remember when the world blew up?
In 74?
Yeah, the earth blew up.
No.
Yeah, it blew up. I was trying to buy an Albert King record at Park City, and they didn't have an Albert King record. But in the import section, there was a Freddie King record because I had figured out that Jimmy liked Albert King, and I thought I could get, I would like Albert King if Jimmy liked it. Right. So they, of course, in 74 or whatever year it was, in Park City, there was no such thing. You weren't going to find any blues records. But I did find in the import section a Freddie King record, and Bruce gave me the money to buy that and an import Jimi Hendrix bootleg album. And I went home. It was 1974, and I turned on Mom's Zenith. And I put that Freddie King record on, and I put that needle down, and it was a live version of Ain't Nobody's Business, and the world blew up when I heard it. Just shattered.
You soiled yourself.
It was just fucking over.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Those first notes of that was just like, oh my God. By the way, did you hear about, we were talking about all the different music and everything that the Beatles had to do and everything. Did you know that around the same time, I guess it was around 76 or 77, that NASA through the sent this space probe called the Voyager.
Uh-huh.
Do you remember the Voyager?
I do.
And it was to go out to all the outer planets, and then what was done, it was going to go out into outer space further and further past the Oort belt and everything, and it's now out beyond our solar system.
Mm-hmm.
It's the furthest thing from man ever made. But on board was a record, digital record. You remember? And it had on the record, it had like readings in every language, and it had like pictures and movies of different animals and things, and a map of the earth where in our solar system, and it had all kinds of music, everything from like Beethoven to like Dixieland to Chuck Berry. Mm-hmm. Well, apparently, did you see this morning NASA got a radio signal from outer space? Apparently a civilization, an advanced civilization, has come across the Voyager, and they used the information to send us a 4-word message.
All right.
And they figured it out this morning. It was on the news. Didn't you see? It was like 4 words. They decoded it. You know what they were?
What is it?
Send more Chuck Berry.
I knew it. I knew I was being set up.
Send more Chuck Berry.
I knew I was being set up. All right. Guitar players. What advice can you give to guitar players? Coming up, what do they need to know? What don't they need to know? What do they need to be worrying about? What don't they need to be worrying about?
Well, I often said that my philosophy is meat and potatoes. When you make a stew, the meat and potatoes take up 80% of it, 90% of it. Mm-hmm. The rest of it is pinches and dashes of different seasonings. Mm-hmm. And depending on what you're making the stew for and who you're making it for should be the seasonings. The other thing is to understand the Ferrari mechanic. When you go take your Ferrari into the Ferrari mechanic, mm-hmm. there are certain tools that this person has that's only good for the bolt that's underneath the left door rest. Do you follow me?
I absolutely know what you're talking about.
So that guy will have that tool in there forever. And other people say, why'd you buy that tool? But when he needs it, it's the only thing that works, right?
Yeah.
So think if you're playing that way. So the first thing we want to get is our meat and potatoes. And that better be you better know how to make that meat and potatoes. Don't want the potatoes soggy, and you don't want the meat tough. Right. It's not as easy as it sounds.
Right.
What are our meat and potatoes? Well, I would say fully understanding the major scale, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, and the chords that go with it.
Right.
And understand how you can flip that to a minor scale and the chords that go with that.
Relative minor, yep.
And if you can figure out the pentatonic positions for that major scale and the 5 positions that it has, I know you can break it down to more than 5, but it's basically 5. Mm-hmm. And the 5 minors, you could be pretty dangerous with that material. Then what you want to start doing is saying, well, how can I make this sound a little more jazzy? How can I make this sound a little more European? How do I make this sound a little more this? And you don't have to learn to be the guy that makes the egg foo young. You just got to know where in the store to go to get the seasoning.
Right.
For that one particular thing. Mm-hmm. And you can really do a lot that way. Like if you can just learn what, how to add how to add a minor third to a major scale or a major third to a minor scale. Sounds big, but it's not. And those are pretty simple things that you can focus on and the chords that go with them.
Yeah.
You can be dangerous if you know it. Then you can take your time. And I then say, once you have the meat and potatoes, explore it all. But understand, don't go down the rabbit holes. Listen, inversions are great. But Elton John plays the inversions, not the guitar player. What the hell's wrong with you?
Inversions are for sissies.
No, you need to know what they are so you don't look like a moron if somebody starts talking about it. But come on, in rock and roll, how important are inversions?
Yeah. Rhythm and blues, though.
Understand. I got it. Yeah. I got it. You have to know about it, but you don't have to be this,
Here the thing is, you don't necessarily have to be a master at anything. In other words, to say you're a master, that is setting the bar too high. You can't be a master at everything, but
have your meat and potatoes.
Yeah.
And then you got to learn other things. Like it's good to know arpeggios. I can't say it right, but say it for me.
Arpeggios.
Arpeggios.
It's a French word.
Well, I'm part French, okay? What do you want? Arpeggio? Huh?
Arpeggio.
Arpeggio.
Arpeggi.
Arpeggio.
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 Like demolished arpeggio.
That's very important to know a few of those. Here's the thing: if you know a
chord tones,
if you know a major seventh arpeggio, and understand how to play it against a minor, like if you're an A minor, you play a C major 7 arpeggio, you all of a sudden sound jazzy.
Right.
That one thing can freshen up the audience's ears and freshen you up as a player. You might only do it twice a night,
or not even.
It feels great.
But that stuff's actually more useful than a lot of stuff people work on.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You don't need to know every scale and every inversion, and you don't need to know all this exotic stuff.
But what are your thoughts on sweep picking? Do we spend 9 hours working on it?
I'm not even sure what it means.
That's what I'm saying. That's
the
stuff that all the Guitar Hero stuff that we talk about. We might use,
and I
might use in our solo, our wankery solo.
And look,
learn how to play for the song.
I don't know what that means, but I can show you last month's calendar, and I'm sure I'm working a lot.
Right.
What's that tell you?
That tells me what I need to know. What I'm saying is play for the song. Learn to play for the song.
Well, that's what's great. You know, look, that's how I came up. Mm-hmm. And it served me well now that I'm not just a guy that plays for songs. Here's the thing. Always learn. Mm-hmm. Again, always learn. Keep learning. Keep pushing the envelope. Don't change who you are. Be you. Develop your style. It's okay. Whatever it is, you develop that. Learn to play as you, not as Eddie Van Halen, or not as this guy or that guy. Be you. Don't. Okay. If you want to learn, there's a version of Electric Ladyland that's just Jimmy. It's about 1.5 minutes long. I learned that not to play it ever. You will never hear me play that. You know why? I can never perfect it because it's the guy that perfected it is Jimmy. But I learned that as an exercise in using double stops and pull-ups. Mm-hmm. So which I learned that there was this guy at this music store I worked at that had a copy machine, and he used to print out these exercises, and he would say similar to, I don't know if he said you would, but it'd be like exercise in the sound of like the Beatles or in the sound of Pink Floyd or that was you. You would give examples in the style of.
Yes.
So, that's all really good. And that's what you want to do. Do it as you do it in the style of. Because if you're playing as you, when I play as Quentin Jones and I play as me and my sound and my style and my tone, no one's better than me because who's better than me?
Right. That's the best advice. That is the best advice.
Now, keep pushing.
As an old guy, I wish I would have found that out like 30 years ago.
Right. And keep pushing what you do. That's not saying don't learn.
Yes.
But don't change who you are. Take these other things like a major 7, arpeggio. Arpeggio. I had to practice David's name for like 3 years. I couldn't say it. I still can't say Kenny's last name right.
I mix him up with that drummer guy.
Well, Aaron's son. I say Aaronson.
Okay.
And he's like, no, it's Aaron's son. All right, Aaronson. No. But anyways, my point is you learn these different things.
Yeah.
And you expand who you are with them, not change who you are.
Yeah. Yep.
I'm really going down some rabbit holes of some exotic scales. You and I were talking about it last night. What, not real exotic, but even like a Phrygian dominant.
Yeah.
That's okay. There's some
usable.
Very usable after you have your other shit done.
Yeah, and it's very usable for somebody like yourself.
Songwriter.
Mm-hmm.
Gives you a whole new set of chords to deal with. Or again, maybe I'm up there with some. Here. Do you ever hear of Cedric Burnside?
It seems like I did.
Yeah, he's a Grammy-winning blues guitar player. His father was a very famous blues player, right?
Okay.
Or
Is that R.L. Burnside?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
I had to stand next to him on stage on a live broadcast. He's standing there next to me, and it's just him playing. Then he, okay, now it's time for Quentin to play. Gotta follow that guy.
Yeah, right.
Steve Warner, you know who he is?
I do. Country.
He played, and then it was time for Quentin to play.
Guitar player.
On another gig.
Yeah.
These guys got actual Grammys on their counters.
Yeah. Yep.
You know what I did?
I
fought like hell, and I pulled everything out. And that was the time where I could take one little piece of pepper,
right,
and add it into my playing, so I didn't look like every other freaking idiot.
Yeah.
That was playing major pentatonics.
What
Nothing
you didn't
wrong
do
with
is try to sound like Steve Warner.
And I didn't try to sound like Burnside. And I didn't try to sound like Van Halen. I just took a little bit of this sparkle. I changed the icing on my playing. And I did okay. I was fine. Everything was great. In fact, the one guy said, wow, I really liked your playing.
Yeah.
I'll see you. Thank you. Tip your hat. That's why you like hats. Well, thank you very much. Good to see you tonight.
Yes. So your band now, you have a couple bands, but the band that I know your trio is you want to tell the world about your trio?
Well, I had a band called the Quentin Jones Trio, which I'm changing. That's not what you're talking about, though, is it?
No.
I'm in a band called QDK.
Right.
And Q for Quentin, D for David, all sickening, and K for Kenny Aronson.
Yes.
Now, that is a perfect example of me putting myself in the room with people more accomplished than me. Kenny has a wall, and so does Dave, of hit records, gold records. Let me show you mine. Ready? There they are. You just right there. There they are. There. It's the whole stack of them. That's my hit records right there.
Right.
So what do you do? How do you lead a band like that? Yeah. How do you tell Marshall Crenshaw to change the tone of his amplifier in the studio?
How did you?
Just be honest.
Okay.
So that was a Robert Gordon session, who I ended up, we talked about that. And the second album, he had Marshall Crenshaw come in because Marshall Crenshaw wrote some big songs for him. And Marshall's like, Quentin, you got to see this amp. I got this 1910 amplifier and this 1905 guitar and this 1930s, I'm exaggerating here, but, he had all this vintage stuff, just, and then Robert, he was playing for Robert Gordon. And Robert, I come out of the studio and Robert's sitting there with his head in his lap. I'm like, what's wrong? I say, hey, man, I don't like his sound. That meant Quentin, go change his sound.
Sounds just like Elvis.
So I had to walk into the room with this guy that played John Lennon on Broadway, for Christ's sake. Right. Played Buddy Holly in the movie La Bamba and wrote hits for everybody. I got to tell him to change his sound.
He was playing with the Smithereens last I heard.
Yes. Yeah. By the way, the drummer for the Smithereens came to my house and played drums in the basement. Did you know that?
No, I did not. I saw him with Davies.
Yeah, Dennis Steichen played on the Charlie Gracie record with me. Anyways, you just be honest, that's the whole point, and you be sincere, and don't think you know everything, and don't think that you can't make mistakes, and don't think that you don't have it wrong. Yeah. Listen to what other people say, and try to steer your ship in the direction of your strengths.
Right.
and that's what you do. And my band, we're making a name for ourselves. We're actually people come to see us play when we play. We played at Zootropolis, and we had a full night. And then we play with other artists. Like we played with Diana Bella, right, from Bow Wow Wow, and before that we played with Billy Burnett from Fleetwood Mac, and a bunch of other bands. And so like what we offer is like guys that maybe want to come up into the area, but nowadays you can't move 7 people or something like that. We're like, look, well, you be our guest. Now we're not backing, we're backing you up, but we're not like, we didn't try to be Bow Wow Wow, or we don't try to be whoever, like Linda Gale Lewis, we backed her up. We're us, you get us doing your stuff. Now, don't get me wrong, you've got to play some of the signature licks the right way. Don't, you know what I mean?
I Want Candy.
Yeah, if you don't play the I Want Candy intro, then, it's not I Want Candy.
Right.
Which the guy that is the co-writer of I Want Candy was very instrumental also in my career.
Strangeloves?
Yeah.
Okay. Who is that?
Richard Goddard.
He wrote it, yes.
Did you read the article?
I did.
He was in the article.
Yes, and then Robert Gordon, he produced Robert Gordon's stuff.
Yeah, and that's how I met Robert Gordon, was through Richard Goddard.
And Jeffrey Gaines.
I did not meet him through Jeffrey Gaines.
I know, he produced Jeffrey Gaines.
Did he?
I think his first album was Richard Goddard.
Was it? Yeah, you're right. That first album's great.
It is. Agreed.
I like Jeff's a great guy. He comes out to see us.
Yeah.
And he works with In the Pocket sometimes. In the Pocket, you don't play for In the Pocket, you get a spot with them.
Okay, got it.
It's a rotating cast of characters from gig to gig and from song to song.
Yeah.
Me and Greg Stover. Greg Stover's great, man. He's this guitar player, he's a younger guy. He's amazing. And he's working with Billy Cox right now.
Okay.
So anyways, we're the newer guys, and the other guys, there's guys very established, and we were playing a show where they had this big stage that had steps. So, people go up steps, they come down the steps, then they come back up the steps. And Greg and I are standing there. Like, Greg, how come you and I only get to go up and down the steps once, and these guys are up and down like jackrabbits every 5 minutes? They're getting up and down, and we're standing, get it, we like to joke around. Usually I we have a lot of fun. So
that's wonderful.
We're like, I'm like, come everyone, because every time you go up the steps, there's another spot on the stage, and I'm like, we only went up once. I'm joking, of course, I'm bringing light to things. I'm smiling, But that's a phenomenal thing that Dave put together.
Yeah.
It really is a great thing. I mean, the people come out to see that, and it's fresh all the time. I got to play with Tommy Conwell on there, and I don't know.
Tommy Conwell, somebody we need to just give a shout out to.
Tommy Conwell is one of the greatest guitar players on the planet.
Yes, he is wonderful.
Period.
And I'm going to give a shout out to you, because I would not have known it were it not for you. And we're not even going to talk about your record label.
Yeah, we had
and the Little Kings are some of my favorite albums.
Those records are great, aren't they?
Yes.
You know how I produce those records?
Get them in the studio and let them play.
Stay the hell out of their way.
Right. They were a good sounding band to begin
with. Gave them what they wanted.
Right.
See, I worked with Kenley Collins.
Yeah.
As a producer, you have so many different jobs. Like with a band like the Little Kings and Tommy Conwell, your job is to facilitate.
Yes. Stay
the hell out of the way.
Yeah.
You can turn something good into shit in no time.
Yeah.
With your stupid ideas.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe you should just shut the fuck up and turn the knob.
Right.
With Kenley Collins, Kenley would come down and I'd put a click track on and I'd take an acoustic guitar and I just had a room mic and she would sing the songs that she wrote. I'd play the acoustic and she would sing. I'd just capture it to a click. Then she'd go home and I'd start building the song.
Yeah.
The drum track, the bass track, the horn tracks, the keyboard tracks, build.
You're saying your production style varies from person to person.
Thank you. And then I did the whole album and I did a wall of sound type thing with her. She wanted a big sounding record. And then when it was all done, she came in and cut the vocals.
Yeah.
She wasn't even there for the background vocals. And she wrote the songs. I'm not taken away. That's what she wanted to do. She didn't want to be in there while I'm going over
You
the
want to arrange it. She's not going to take out her quill pen and
Thank you.
write out the string quartet.
That's right. And she was a very talented person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She could write lyrics faster than anybody I know. Either that or she had them all written. I don't know.
Yeah.
You ever hear of Kim Fowley?
Of course.
Well, he was almost a friend of mine. I wrote a song with him, and I knew him. I had many conversations with him. I would call him a friend.
Okay.
And I remember one night he introduced my band, and he pronounced one of the words wrong. I don't remember. It was the Reach Around Rodeo Clowns. I don't know, maybe he called it the Wrap Around Rodeo Clowns or something he said. And so we went on. I did my first song, and I saw him standing in the audience, and I said, "Hey, Kim, so you know our name. Come on. You know who we are. Come on. You know our name." And then the guy that managed Guns N' Roses was there, and he had this. He also managed a band called Motley Crue. And
Divins.
Huh?
The Divins.
No, this guy, I can't remember this guy's name.
On Divins was
No, this guy was he's another guy, but I can't think of his name. He was a big label guy.
okay.
And he pretended like he didn't know me that night. He was sitting right in front of the stage and right in front of me at my feet. And I kept turning and looking at him saying, "How you doing tonight? You doing okay? Come on, you know who I am, don't you? Come on." I always give people a hard time. I don't care. Fuck you. You're not with Mark the Hoople now, or whoever the hell it is you managed.
Right.
Slap you in the side of the head, just like Dad did to teach you not to touch the electrical outlet while you're sitting in the water, you jerk.
Yeah. One more question. Okay, so let's go back at 1999, no, 2000. Reach Around Rodeo Clowns, CBGBs. I was your roadie. It was one of the coolest guitar solos ever. That's what I remember from that night.
Was it that big Rockabilly show that was there?
Yeah.
It was a Saturday night.
Yeah.
We actually got paid that night.
Yeah, I didn't, but I was.
Well, no, because we didn't get enough to cover our ass, but we actually got money.
I didn't need it. I got paid.
That was a good night. That was
night.
That was us at our peak.
Yes, that was a wonderful night.
And we peaked right then and there. And I'm so pissed off. I'm trying to think of that manager's name, this guy I'm thinking about. It's not Doc McGee.
That's Kiss now.
Yeah.
Mike. Yeah.
I used to get Christmas cards from Kiss.
Okay.
Did you ever see them?
No, but we missed talking.
Reach Around Rodeo Clowns would get business cards from Kiss. The Rodeo Clowns, not me personally, the Rodeo Clowns.
Did you?
Gene Simmons.
You went through a Kiss phase?
Gene Simmons has our poster in his house, Reach Around Rodeo Clown poster.
Okay.
Well, of course I went through a Kiss phase.
Okay, well, not everyone does. Some people are elitist.
We would Reach Around Rodeo Clowns did Detroit Rock City.
Okay. I never.
Yeah, we did a cover of that.
Like, okay, so Ace Frehley has Shocked Me. I forget what your guitar solo was, but as I'm remembering, you put your guitar down and you lit boards on fire and karate chopped it.
Yes,
that was your guitar solo.
Yeah, we chopped the boards. Karate chopped. Cool, huh?
Well,
set it on fire.
About 20 years later.
Yeah.
23 years later. 24 years later.
Yeah, man.
That was
we were at our peak at that point.
Yes.
When that band was right, it was like a herd of buffalo coming at you.
Yeah.
You know.
Uh-huh.
But the thing that people didn't realize was how much finesse it took to play that stuff.
Yeah.
It sounded like it didn't, but it was very, you had to be, as a guitar player, I learned more about playing with drums by playing with Dave Ferreira, playing that stuff, because it was very precise stuff.
Yeah. Well, he's a wonderful, wonderful drummer.
Oh, he's a great drummer. Also played with Liberty DeVito. He's a great drummer.
Okay. Yes.
From Billy Joel's band.
Of course. Yep.
First time he played with the Rodeo Clowns.
Great drummers.
Yeah, well, he played for the Rodeo Clowns when Dave couldn't do it one time. Plus, I'd done other gigs. I remember the first night we played with, and he's one of these guys that loves Wendell. You know, he just absolutely loves Wendell. But we were playing with the Rodeo Clowns, and it was his first night, and I turned around and he had a set of dowel rods, and I said, you're not going to need those. we don't use it. I said one of the stupidest things I ever said to him, to anybody. I said to him, we were playing in Brooklyn, and I said, get there early because there's going to be about 400 people there. Oh, I never told you the Kim Fowley story.
Okay, go
So
ahead.
I said, get there early because there's going to be like 400 people there. You know, there's going to be a lot of people there. And then I was watching HBO and I saw Billy Joel at Red Square and there was 500,000 people there. I felt like a real idiot. This man played in front of 500,000 people, and I'm telling him to get there early because there's a lot of people, 400 or so.
Yeah.
You know, what the Kim Fowley story I want to tell you is I talked to him on the phone one time, and he told me his whole story from beginning to end, and it was like, oh my God, this guy, you know, is a great storyteller. And he was like talking to Hannibal Lecter, and you know, I actually was in a sweat when I hung up the phone. And then years later, I saw him being interviewed in a movie, and he told the exact same story.
How long did it
word for word. It was like a 10-minute dissertation, you know.
take? Oh, got it.
But it was like, wow, these guys, they got their shit down to where, you know, there ain't nothing that's not rehearsed.
Right.
You know?
They're like licks.
Yeah. As for me, I'm winging it all the time.
Right.
What do you want to do? You want to rehearse? Nah, let's just wing it.
The
Rocket 88. You played with me a couple times at Rocket 88, right?
The Rockets.
No, Rocket 88 with
yeah. Yeah, that was St. George's.
Yeah.
And then and somewhere else in Delaware.
He really liked you.
Well, I liked them too. Yeah. I had a good time. I just didn't have a precision bass, so that was
yeah.
my thing. But what was I gonna say? What was the band Harrisburg with you, I, and Jim Rhodes?
Oh God, who knows?
But I remember because it's like I was the bass player, and you're like, okay, so here's where the money's at. You only play all the money notes were on the two bottom strings.
It's true.
Remember that gig? You're not wrong. But even so, I'm a punk. So the money notes, I was messing the money. Every time I would hit the other strings, I would wince because I felt like I was going to get hit like your father hit you in the back of the head. I didn't want to get the ray.
Did you see the video that Jason Lewis? I shared it on my page. Tips for playing with Quentin Jones.
Yeah, I got it again.
It was great.
Yeah.
All of my looks are the same looks scowling at you.
Right. I didn't want to get the ray. Thank you, Quentin, for this.
Hey.
We gotta do this more often.
Anytime you want, I'll come on and talk. What do you got behind there? An Epiphone Les Paul custom. Orville. Interesting guitar.
Yep. I can't afford a $5,000 guitar. Not this year.
Let me tell you a story, then we'll finish. This will be a quick one.
All right.
As you know, I'm a Gretsch man, right?
I do.
We talked about the Hofner bass last night, right?
You did?
When I was a kid, I wanted a black Les Paul Sakova. Remember Sakova?
Yeah.
Sakova guitars, they were like $150 copies, right? And they made an exact copy of that guitar, and I wanted it. I was convinced it was the same guitar George Harrison had. I didn't realize that Gretsch made their version of Les Paul called the Duo Jet. And that's what, anyways. So recently I have a student, and he's a great guy. He's an older guy. I teach more older. I teach some kids, but most of my students are 45 plus, you know, and they're established people and everything. So I was talking about it, and I told this guy, I was like, yeah, I'm thinking about, I always wanted a Les Paul. Not my guitar. It's not going to be the kind of guitar you see me play. It's not my workhorse, but I just wanted one to have one, you know? And I told him I was thinking about getting like either tobacco sunburst standard or a cherry sunburst, because that's really, if you get a standard, it should be a sunburst, and if you get the custom, it's black or white if you're a Randy Rhoads guy.
Mhm.
So a couple days later, the guy comes and he says, he tells me, he goes, I got a Les Paul, and he brings in this beautiful flame top Les Paul standard tobacco sunburst. He's like, I'm thinking about getting rid of it. And I pick it up, it's like mint. It's only a couple of years old. I go, oh, well, I said, what do you want for it? He goes, I thought you'd ask me that. He said, I looked it up. So here's the price I'm thinking about. How about this deal? Why don't you take that guitar home and never bring it back? He says, how's that price for you, Quentin?
That's wonderful.
I said, that sounds like a good deal. So I got me a Les Paul, man, a Gibson Les Paul. Pretty cool, huh?
Very cool. Very cool.
That was a nice thing for him to do.
Absolutely. And you won't.
Guys like us can't afford it.
Huh?
Guys like us can't afford it. That's why I think Gretsch is the greatest company on the planet, because they're endorsing me. They're helping me.
Yes.
Me.
With your,
Not a rock star.
Right.
Working class guy.
Yeah.
I could not afford the guitars I play if they didn't help me out.
Yes.
That's the way it should be.
Yeah.
Slash has plenty of money to buy Les Pauls.
Yes.
Rod doesn't.
Right.
And it's turned into a thing where people that have very high paying jobs can afford guitars.
Mm-hmm. Stock.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
The whole thing about stock brokering is, the whole secret, right?
No.
Here's the financial secret. Remember this and you'll always do well. Ready?
All right.
Don't forget it. You might want to write this down. Or you can play this back, right?
Right.
Ready?
Mm-hmm.
Buy low, sell high.
It's genius.
Buy low, sell high. That's all you got to do. That's it.
All right.
Same thing with guitar playing. Boil it down to the meat and potatoes. Buy low, sell high. Where are the money notes?
Right. Only
All
on
right.
the bottom strings.
All right. Well, you gonna let me know when you will you have what? Does this go on your website or what?
YouTube and.
Well, you let me know and I'll put it on
Guitar Nerds on Facebook.
Am I on that with you? Or?
If you have any links, send them my way. But we thank you, Quentin Jones. I hope this is not the only time we do this.
I'll be happy. All you got to do is get a hold of me.
We can talk another
hours.
Yes, about other stuff.
We can talk about guitars. We can talk about basses. We can talk about amps.
Right.
We can talk about pedals and why you need them and why you don't.
Yes. Absolutely. Thank you, Quentin. Thank you, Guitar Nerd.
Thank you. Talk to you soon. All right.